Welcome to TORAH Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 27 of Controversial Issues with Rabbi Chaim Coffman from the Holy Land. Haha. Rabbi, how are you? Good to see you again,
Doing great.
sir. Yes, very good, very good. It took me a little while to get in here. I had a lot of traffic and a lot of work detail that I had to finish up, and it was just... it was very time taxing. So, but we did finally make it. So glad we made it. Hopefully we'll have a few viewers. They might have thought we weren't going to record, but the good news is recording the Facebook Live. So those who thought we weren't recording just got to notice that we're recording. So that could be a good thing. Very good.
As long as Facebook Live holds up, we're good.
Hey, you know, as long as anything holds up with you around, it's good. I'm just saying.
Come on, let's keep up my image. Let's go, right?
I'm just being real with you right now, okay?
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So last week, last show, 2 weeks ago, we discussed Noahides doing the whole kosher thing, and for all those who didn't see last night's show with Rabbi Chaim Zirkin, we did a kosher kitchen show, which is really fun and very, very informative. I was just like, wow, I was wowed by it. So if you want to know more about it and you didn't know we did that last night, you want to go back and check the archives. So we're going to discuss tonight, why is it that it seems like that Noahides are rejected by everybody, and even especially rejected by Judaism? It seems like in the Torah we get the impression that the Jews are supposed to be nice and welcoming, especially those who are wanting to serve the one true God. But then when you actually go to a synagogue and you go and try to check in at the door, it seems like they try to lead you right to the back door on the way out. And I personally have experienced that weird awkwardness a few times. Personally, I kind of get it, but still, a lot of people out there really want some answers because, some of these Noahides are actually future converts, and if they really get shunned so badly, it's like this. Really, it's heartbreaking to see people go through that, who've already gone through so much rejection as it is leaving the church, and so that's what we want to talk about tonight. So you can enlighten us. We would all be grateful, sir. Thank you, by the way. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll watch the YouTube chat. Phone lines are open, 855-952-4253. That translates to 855-95-BIBLE. So that way, if you're on the road, you can always remember what our phone number is. So there you go. And if you
who remembers the letters with numbers? Come on, it's like 1-800 get my pizza. Like nobody remembers any numbers. It's like speed dial 1. Oh, that's my wife. Speed dial 2. That's my dog. Speed dial 3.
That's
so
funny.
Yeah, hot topic about
yes.
About Noahide spoke a few weeks back about non-Jew keeping Shabbos and all the issues. All the issues with that. Certainly, like a convert as well, they're also, not welcomed in the door, so to speak. The red carpet's not, it's not open necessarily. It's not laid out for them, So why, we'll hit both of them pretty much. Why should that be?
Good.
And for converts, we'll make it easy that converts given the Jews bad name, for the last 2,000 years. Or so, and they helped or caused sin of the golden calf when the Jewish people were at the highest level since since Adam and Eve, before they ate from the tree of knowledge. So they also why a person would want to convert. People are going to question because Jews obviously are not at the top of their game. We have no temple, been persecuted, and pogroms, and and all that. So people are going to question, why would somebody be interested in conversion, and they're going to have to prove themselves, along the way in order to show that they're real. And, part of that, they have to move into a Jewish community, be part of the community. I was just texting someone earlier, about, certain communities, it doesn't matter where they are in the world. If a person doesn't live near Jews, that's pretty obvious that you would have to, do that in order to convert, because, if you're not going to be part of the Jews, then that's it.
Right.
No one in their right mind is going to convert you. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter what continent. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, Chinese, It has nothing to do with, race or color or anything like that. So now being a Noahide, so we'll see, that's the topic for tonight. Being a Noahide is a whole different beast. Now, the reason it's a whole different beast is because when you look at, throughout history, there was this idea of a ger toshav, right? A ger toshav was somebody who lived in the land, right? Meaning the land of Israel, and they did not convert. They lived amongst the Jews. They didn't do idolatry. They weren't idolatrous, right? They kept the Noahide laws, etc. And there were certain obligations, by the Jews if someone, was part of the community, what their obligation was, to help them, to sustain them, and all that gets a little bit complicated. But, for a Noahide, the whole question is that Noahides want to learn. They've come out of idolatry, whatever idolatry that is. They want to learn, they want to study, but they don't want to convert, right? So a Noahide's going to show up. Let's say they live near, in the vicinity of an Orthodox synagogue. They're going to show up and they're going to say, Rabbi, teach me Torah. I want to learn. I want to be part of things. I want to be able to come. And most rabbis not necessarily equipped, to deal with these people, converts as well. But what happens is they're going to say, I want to come and I want to do, and the rabbi is going to say, okay, so why don't you convert? So they say, what do you mean? I don't have to convert, right? Doesn't, a righteous non-Jew has a portion of the world to come. Why would I need to convert? I can still eat shrimp. I can still eat oysters. Things are, things are great. Maybe my spouse doesn't want to convert. Maybe I can't move, or maybe I just want to be a Noahide. I'm not interested in, in conversion. So the rabbi sitting back is going to say, okay, so what's the deal? We're not, throughout history, this, except for the idea of the ger toshav, there has not really been, such a movement that's been so organized and so grassroots, since the last number of years, where people coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, and, not wanting to convert and being a Noahide. So the Jewish community, doesn't really know what to do with them. What are we allowed to teach them, right? That's a whole nother, this is really part of the topic also. It says that a non-Jew who learns Torah is also liable for the death penalty. Anything a non-Jew does that they don't, that is against the 7 Noahide laws, right? The punishment is by death. Well, thank God idolatry is one of them, right? So thank God there's an idea of repentance, of tshuva, because if there wouldn't, they'd all, someone who comes out of idolatry says, now I've seen the truth, now I've seen the light. Now what happens? They're stuck.
Right.
If there wouldn't be this idea of repentance, then they're finished. But what really gets to the heart of the problem, not just, what do these rabbis do with them? How do they deal with them? What are they allowed to learn? Even if they want to come, what do you do with them? What about prayer? Are they allowed to pray? What are they allowed to pray? So, it's interesting, when it comes to Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law covers everything, right? Covers everything in Torah. Covers the laws of damages, covers marriage, covers divorce, covers all the holidays, about speaking Lashon Hara, right? Or not speaking Lashon Hara, whatever, speaking badly against others. Everything is covered. Noahide laws, nowhere to be found. Absolutely nowhere to be found. So it's spread out in a few places, in the Talmud itself, and you don't have too much from the earlier commentators, from the later commentaries. Basically the authority on the Noahide laws is Maimonides, is the Rambam. Just about anybody else doesn't really deal with this question at all. So there's such a wide view, of what they can do or what they can't do, right? There's almost anywhere in between. There are certain things we spoke before about, what's really off limits, but almost anything else outside of that, they should be allowed to do. So then the question is going to be, okay, so now, they come, or let's say a bunch of people come, they come to the synagogue. Obvious question is, what am I allowed? What am I allowed to do with it? But, if, unfortunately, converts coming in, they're already looked at, in somewhat of a negative way.
Right.
No offense to anyone in the process of conversion or want to convert. They're looked at in a negative way because, obviously they're going to have to prove themselves. They're going to have to show that why they are the real deal and why they want to go through conversion, because it doesn't make any logical sense. My Rebbe says anybody who wants to move to a Jewish community and they see how Jews act and they still want to convert, so either they're the real deal or they're 100% crazy, right? Nothing, nothing really in between. So somebody comes now, they're not interested in conversion. They come out and they're coming out of the woodwork. All of a sudden a whole bunch of people come to synagogue and say, this is what we want. We want to learn. You have to teach us, what to do. The rabbi's going to scratch his beard if he has a beard, or scratch his chrome dome, whatever it is. And he's going to say, what do we, I don't know what to do with these people. It's very strange because we've never had such a phenomenon in history. So based on that, it gets more complicated because, what do we teach them? What are we allowed to teach them? The commentaries bring out a non-Jew has to keep whatever is logical, right? Whatever makes logical sense, they are going to be liable. So one of the Noahide laws being you're not allowed to kill, they can't say, gee, I never thought of that. Why are you going to throw the book at me? A person dies after 120 years and God nails them because, so what are you doing? You're a murderer. Did you know you weren't allowed to murder? He said, well, no, I didn't know anything about the Torah. I grew up as a Christian. No one ever told me, no one ever told me that, you're not allowed, you're not allowed to do that. Grew up as a potato farmer in Idaho, right? No, no offense to anyone who lives in Idaho or is a potato farmer. But in that sense, they grew up knowing nothing. But God's going to say, but doesn't it make logical sense? You're not allowed to murder. Forget the Bible. You're not allowed to kill people, right? That's you do that, you're going to jail. You're going to end up in jail. So a rabbi's got to look at this and say, wow, this is really complicated, and this is why there are Noahide places that are springing up. A few places in Texas, one in Humble with Rod Bryant. Right. In other places, other places as well. And, they have rabbis come in, they do a lot of things, live stream, et cetera, where, people are getting classes. But, this is almost like a drop in the bucket compared to the people that out there. First of all, they don't know what a Noahide is. Second of all, they don't know how to tap in. And even if they want to tap in, they're going to say, well, who's going to teach me? Who's qualified? Right, who's qualified to teach? And it gets complicated, much more complicated by the second, because even if you have somebody, that's qualified, it's going down a slippery slope.
Well, let me ask this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a Noahide.
Of course, you're going to interrupt, so I'm going to let you go ahead. You get the first question.
That's funny. A Noahide that doesn't want to convert, they want to stay a Noahide. Can they expect to be able to go to shul and sit in and learn?
Well, that depends what the rabbi of the synagogue wants to do. Definitely, I think a Noahide should pray. What they're allowed to pray, is something else. There's somebody now working on a Noahide, prayer book, but at the same time, there are plenty of things that we as Jews say that, off limits, to a Noahide. So if they want to come in, again, that's another slippery slope. There will be rabbis that, may allow them to come. But it's a big catch-22. Also, the service is going to be in Hebrew. They're not going to be able to follow so well. They'll have to, certainly work on that. But, what really needs to be done is to set up communities in order that they have their own thing. In other words, that they don't need to be part of an Orthodox community. They don't need to live near an Orthodox community, but you need lay leaders, so to speak, in order to give over information to the people that, to want to learn. So best case scenario, worst case scenario, is most people don't live near a Jewish community. Right? They don't live close to a Jewish community, so it knocks them out. The ones that do live near a Jewish community, I know of a number of places where where people are welcome. Let's say for Rosh Hashanah they want to come, or for Yom Kippur, or for Sukkot, they are welcome. But I definitely do understand where synagogues and rabbis of synagogues are going to say, like, what are you kidding? Like, you want to sit in? Just go home and learn Proverbs, say Tehillim, say some Psalms, say the Shema. You can say the Shema, declaring God's oneness, etc. That's definitely a very good thing for them to do. But you want to come and be part of us and be part of our service, right? Most of them will probably tell you, like, so convert.
Right.
And the person's going to come back and say, hey, I heard Rabbi Coffman say I can still eat shrimp, and I'm interested in eating shrimp. So I don't want to convert. So it's a big catch-22. I would assume that, there are a lot of rabbis who will probably try and push them away and say, you can join in certain things, but, coming to synagogue, certainly may be off limits. There'll be others, that will, that'll welcome them. And I think part of the welcoming process will be that they probably think they're gonna peter out anyway, because even if they come once in a while, it's not and it's not an easy service definitely to follow and to certainly understand. So they might not get that much out of it. It may be almost a lost cause. Now there are
would it be safe to say that Noahides should not expect to be accepted upon entry? Because your expectations is where people get most heartache, okay? And so in my mind, as you're talking, I was just kind of visualizing. I had a couple friends that were police officers, and every once in a while they would let you ride in the car with them. Keep in mind the metaphor here, okay? You got the cop and the non-cop, right? And every once in a while they would let him ride. Well, if the non-cop decided, well, I wanted to wear a uniform too, he would think he was crazy. You can't wear a cop uniform. That's impersonating the police officer. That's serious business, right? And so how much more respect should we give Hashem than we do our national government? And that's the one thing that I think I've always struggled with so many people who claim the victim on this thing is they don't give Hashem the same respect that they would give the community, the same respect that they would give their wife even or their husband.
But you're right. That is exactly the problem, because people coming out, they think that the Jewish community owes them.
Right, or that they should accept them, and really they shouldn't.
Yeah, someone who converts, they say, I've come out of Christianity, I've come out of whatever, and I'm serious, and fine, I'll prove I'm serious, but why are they not welcoming? Right? Why are they not, opening up the red carpet? Why not they giving me the royal treatment? So after a while, when a person's proved themselves, okay, so then, that's something different. But nobody in their right mind, should assume that everything's going to go, so easy. And that's our responsibility, because keep in mind, someone comes in front of a Beis Din, someone comes in front of a rabbinical court and they want to convert, the rabbinical court has to put their name, on this conversion. So when they put their name on the conversion, if the person goes sour 5 months later, a year later, 6 years later, the rabbinical court gets all their transgressions because they converted them and it was a big mistake. Right? It looks like a big mistake. So people say, well, the rabbis do this and they're, and they, it's not a set standard and they allow this one and not this one. And, they have all kinds of complaints. I'm not saying they're not necessarily legit, but, at the end of the day, they're the ones calling the shots. Right, they take a tremendous amount, of responsibility. Now, if someone's going to come in and say, listen, I'm out of the church, I'm out of being a Hindu, I'm, whatever, I just want to learn, and I want to, I'm going to show I'm the real deal. I have no interest in conversion. I have no interest in proselytizing and all that. The rabbi's going to scratch his beard. It's like, all right, what do you want from me? Right. What in the world do you want from me? Because that's strange. Because what ends up happening is a lot of people get into Judaism, and the more they learn, right, they're going to say, well, I want to do more. So there is a lot of leeway of what a person can do as a Noahide. That being the case, a lot of people are going to say, no, I just want the whole thing, but then they can't move, or they have other issues. But yeah, people expect things, and I think you hit the nail, really on the head. Is that people expect things that are unrealistic. They're totally unrealistic. Like someone was texting me before, in telling, in saying that, there's certain people you should help. I said, if they don't live by Jews, I can't help them.
Right.
If they don't live in a Jewish community, how are they supposed to convert? I mean, so I said, I got a better idea. Let them convert online. That'll be recognized by nobody. You can jump into a virtual mikvah. Zoop, there we go. You can jump in. That doesn't make any logical sense. Maimonides says in the laws of repentance, one of the 24 things that stops a person from properly repenting is if you separate yourself from the community. You say, well, it's not the Talmud. I have to, that I have to live in the community. The rabbis don't bring it down. You're right, they don't. But that's pretty obvious. How are you going to be a Jew if you don't live amongst Jews?
It's really funny. There was a visual that I saw that was really, really interesting. I'll try to shorten it as much as possible, but it nails your point down like intensely. There was this guy this Jewish guy who was been part of a synagogue for years, and his wife died, and after his wife died, he was emotionally stricken, and he just became like an introvert, and he stopped going to shul. And after 2 or 3 weeks of just not coming, the rabbi stops by and knocks on the door. The man opens up the door, didn't say a word, he just opens up the door. He sees the rabbi, and he just kind of steps out of the way and opens the door, lets him come in. It's kind of wintertime. And so, and then the man went and sat down on the couch in front of the fireplace and just staring at the fireplace, because winter times, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so the guy sitting there for 10, 15 minutes, the rabbi's sitting there, and they're just both of them staring at the fireplace. Finally, the rabbi gets up and he walks over and he grabs the tongs and he takes one of the coals out of the fireplace and he pulls it out and he sits it on the hearth on the little stones outside. And then he goes back and sits down, and it was actually flaming when he pulled it out, and it starts to die down. It's dying down more and more. Next thing you know, it's just like this glowing coal, and even that started to get darker. And then after 10, 15 minutes, whatever, how long it took, he gets back up, and he walks over, still not a word spoken in the entire house, walks over, picks it up, and he sets it inside there, steps aside, and it came back to life again, right? And then he goes back and sit down, and they waited for a couple more minutes. And then the rabbi gets up and heads to the door, and the guy said, "Good sermon. I'll see you next Saturday." I mean, so this guy was emotionally dying inside, but separating yourself from a community, how can you expect to thrive and do well and actually be taught, or whatever the case may be? I mean, everybody should be able to understand that concept. Even on an elementary level, that makes so much sense. Right, but it
used to be someone who lived in a Jewish community, hundreds of years ago, they could get things by osmosis.
Okay.
Because of how strong the community is today. Today that's not the case. But people will still make the claim that I should be able to do what I want, and that's already Torah made in my own image. Like I had someone tell me, it's like, I'm more Jewish than most Jews, and the rabbinical court won't convert me, and because we don't live near the synagogue, and this person going on and on and on. I did try and empathize as much as I could, and then came out the magical lines. But look at all the gays in Israel.
Yeah,
I'm like, so like. But I'm doing more, and I'm doing this. I said, but you cannot, as I always say, you cannot turn the Torah into a pretzel. You cannot just make it up and say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other thing, and, I don't care. You imagine someone wanting to convert to Islam. And you're going to say, I'm going to do it on my terms. What do you think they're going to tell you? Next.
Same thing with the job. I'll learn the business, but I'm going to do it my way. They're going to show you the door. I don't care what kind of job you go to try to get a hold of.
Anybody's going to show anybody's going to show you the door, but when it comes to Judaism, It's like a whole different beast. It's like cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make any sense. I have the right to do this, and I have the right to do that. Well, did you check the Torah? Did you check the commentaries? Did you check what the rabbis say? Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. And if it's not true, where do you get off saying that? I can understand Jews saying that, because we have more chutzpah than most people. But someone coming from the outside, looking in, they say, they say, I deserve this. And the rabbinical court is going to look at them and laugh. They're going to say, we have people like you a dime a dozen, and 80% don't make it. More than 80%. So why am I going to believe, fine. You want to go through this process. Fine. We'll see if it sticks. We'll see what happens, and all that. A Noahide is a whole different, it's a whole different thing. And, one aspect that I didn't mention, which, I think I'll bring up now, forget the Jews. The non-Jews don't want them either, right? They're not Christians.
Right.
they're not, they don't fit in with non-Jews, certainly, with non-Jewish family. The non-Jews don't want them, and the Jews don't want them, and they don't have set up communities. It's like a recipe for disaster. At least if someone comes back to Judaism, if they come back as as an Orthodox Jew, but they have where to go. Anywhere, almost anywhere in the world, there are Jewish communities, that are set up. Some bigger, some smaller. You have a place to go. Someone comes out of Christianity, they say, I heard about this thing being a Noahide, I want to be a part of it. Where do they go? What do they tap into? And a lot of these people, unfortunately, right, they don't really have where to go, but they have online communities. Now, online communities are, they are what they are. They're not, it's not the same as, being in a place, with other, with others, etc., where, you can see people face to face. So that makes it, 10 times more difficult. I was in contact with someone that ended up, he lives in a small town, I forget where in Texas, but like population like 3,000, like very, very small place. And he came out of Christianity, and, he's being a Noahide, he's not going to move. He's not interested, in conversion. But guess what everything in that town revolves around? Well, you hit it. Church.
Right.
That's it. So once he came out, so to speak, he didn't have anyone to talk to. His kids are still in school. They stick out like a sore thumb, but he said, we're going on this path. I'm not looking back. I know this other path is false, right? And I'm not going to move. So, okay, this is my reality. And, unfortunately, it's a sad reality. But, he gets a lot of strength from, what he does with his kids, with his family, what he learns online, classes that they hear. It's not the same thing as, as being in person. But a person can also get frustrated even if they want to come. Even if they're let in the door, how far do we allow that? How,
right.
What are the boundaries? And that's where it gets, really hairy, because there are a lot of things out there that most non-Jews aren't aware of, that part of the Noahide laws.
Okay, so you're a tough guy to play jump rope with, so I'm just got to jump in when I feel like it's safe.
Okay.
So
it's never safe. It's never safe with me. It doesn't matter if Rosh Hashanah is in 2 weeks. Never safe. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So many people feel like why do you have to be in a category anyway? And why do you have to have titles? Why can't we all just be like God's creation and everybody join together in the same place? Why do we have to have titles? Why do we have to be like,
let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Da, na, na. Like, right. Why do we need it? Because person, if they're a non-Jew, right, what is their status? Mm-hmm. Most of them are idolatrous. Sure. Right? So that knocks out about 95%. Right? Most of them are idolaters. If they're not idolaters, what are they? So, de facto, someone in the process of conversion, the same thing. Before they convert, de facto, they're considered a Noahide. Right? They're considered a non-Jew who's going to hold by the Noahide laws. So even if we don't like titles, and everything else, you got to put somebody somewhere. Right? Titles don't mean anything. Also, a person can claim they're an Orthodox Jew, but there are also a lot of different, colors within that as well. Some more modern, less modern, only black hat. I mean, there are different categories. I heard the famous Telz Rosh Shiva from Cleveland, Mordechai Gifter, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, may his name be blessed, said many years ago, he says, I'm not an Orthodox Jew. Right? It's a little bit controversial because, he's the head of a big yeshiva. So I'm not an Orthodox Jew. He said, I'm a Torah Jew. So he say, so he says, I hold by what the Torah says. So if a non-Jew says, I hold by what the Torah says, what does that mean exactly? Right. You need some sort of definition, of what it is. We don't like labels. I definitely agree. Right? Because labels don't mean anything. A person can wear the biggest hat, the longest coat. They claim to be Orthodox, and they commit fraud and commit all kinds of other things. So they're not Orthodox. Just they may look the part. Yeah. But the labels. Again, it's it's a definite issue. But these people, you have to put them somewhere. Mm-hmm. Either they're going to convert and they're going to be in the path to conversion, or as we said, de facto, they're going to be a Noahide, right? And then eventually they'll convert, or not. So if they're not, what is their, what are they? So they are,
right.
They're going to be,
I mean,
they're going to be righteous non-Jews that have a portion of the world to come.
I mean, and realistically too, I mean, you can't really go anywhere in this world, even. You step outside the spiritual realm of things and you go into the tangible world, you have to have a title. Yeah. You have to be in a category somewhere. You're a construction worker. If you are, who's the boss? Somebody's the boss. Somebody's a superintendent. Somebody is a crew leader. Yeah. So it would be, in my opinion, I think it would be unrealistic to say there shouldn't be categories in Judaism, because to me that doesn't make any sense. I mean, even on the practical level, it doesn't make sense at all.
Right. In the secular world, the person meets someone for the first time. Yeah. First or second question is going to be, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. And
now, Now, what you do doesn't define who you are.
Right.
But at the same time, people are going to know, like, oh, you're this or you're that, and then people have their own mindset.
You know what? As crazy as as crazy as it sounds, I mean, I get that question asked to me at least once a week. Why do you got to have a title? Why can't we all worship Hashem together? And I mean, literally, I get that asked all the time. And it's like, it's only expected of them through Judaism's eyes only. It's the only place they expect that to work. Right, and that's why I don't understand why they would ask such a thing, because that would never work anywhere else under any circumstances. Not even in your home. You can't treat an 18-year-old child like you do a 2-year-old child. There's definitive differences between them.
Right. So it's people come with a lot of baggage, with a lot of things that. They expect, let me put this on Judaism also. Right. Well, did you check Judaism before you did that? So or a lot of what I do is I re-squeegee people's brains. That sounds kind of nasty, but
caller,
at the end of the day,
don't hang up. We're going to get to you in just a second, caller. Just sit tight. We'll almost take.
So you're trying to re-squeegee people's brains to what it means to think and to act. Like a Jew. That's not that's certainly not an easy thing. But if you come in with all this baggage, you have to leave all the baggage behind and say, okay, what does the Torah say? What is the point? What am I allowed to do?
Right. That makes sense. Okay, let's take this call. Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Yes, it's Dana Martinez.
Hi, Dana. It was nice meeting you in Houston, by the way.
Shalom.
Shalom to you as well.
Pardon?
I said it was a pleasure meeting you in Houston.
Yes, awesome. It was great. I had a blast.
Yeah, that was a great weekend, for sure.
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay, go for it.
It is, do Jewish people only live in cities? What about people who farm or people who have horses that you don't want to convert?
Or they can't convert because they would have to, change their entire lifestyle?
Well, correct.
Okay,
I have horses.
Right. Hey, we're in the same situation, man. We've got chickens, goats, cats, turtles, rabbits.
Boy, I never come into Texas. Just leave them home. It's like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Woo!
Hey, but let me add to Dana's scenario. Dana, I know you'll appreciate this, right? What about somebody like me?
Because like I said, I have horses. There's got to be Jewish people that farm somewhere.
Right, or what if it's a Jewish person, for example, who's in construction, who has to have a workshop, who can't afford to live in a Jewish community because they got to have a big building to put all the tools and stuff in, and they can't move to a Jewish community. Just another flip of the coin on the same type of scenario. Rabbi's going to cover both of those. Dana, thank you so much for calling in.
Shalom.
Shalom. Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's a great question. What about the farmers, people who want to live off the land and stuff like this? Do they have to give that up and move to a Jewish community and forsake everything that they had just to convert to Judaism?
Right. So that's a good question. I have heard, I think somewhere outside of Denver, Colorado, there was somebody, who was trying to set up this type of community. Well, like an agricultural type of Jewish community. I guess more like a commune, I guess, in a certain way, where people can tap into that and the spiritual at the same time. So I've dealt with a number of people that have had this exact situation where they own farms, some in Maine or whatever other places as well have had farms or whatever, and came to basically came to the same conclusion that if you want to move to a Jewish community, not every Jewish community certainly is in the city. Keep in mind, historically, in the States, the Jews were mostly in the cities, and then things changed. Things changed geographically, and they ended up moving to the suburbs, which killed a lot of communities because people were very spread out. But being that as it is doesn't mean every Jewish community is in the city. I mean, a lot of them are, but they're also in suburbs and whatever. You're not gonna have a Jewish community, like a thriving Jewish community in the mountains of Kentucky. Like you just that's not where Jews are gonna be. If you had Jews there, you could set up a community. I'm not saying that's that's such a that's such a huge thing. If you have it, fine. But if a person's an individual, I mean, keep in mind that you want to cross over. If you want to cross over, something has to change. Now, what is that something has to change? A person's going to have to move. I mean, I know somebody that a very small Jewish community where they are, and they're hoping that they're going to bring Jews in and build a community. So in my language, that's wishful thinking at best. But all things being equal, you got to go where the Jews are. Now, going where the Jews are means that even if someone's a farmer, even if someone's a farmer, you still have to be part of a Jewish community if you're within striking distance. Right? Now, this will be dependent on what the rabbinical court's going to say. If a person within striking distance, half an hour away, 40 minutes away, an hour, whatever, let's say they're going to have a place on Shabbos. They're going to come to synagogue on Shabbos. Now, if you're a woman, you don't have to pray with a minyan anyway. You don't need to pray with 10 men. So fine. For a woman, it's not a problem. What about a guy?
Right.
He's going to pray 3 times a day. What's he supposed to do? You're not allowed to just live in the middle of nowhere because you want to live in the middle of nowhere. As a Jew, you have to be part of the community. So the same thing, if someone wants to be a Jew, now again, most rabbinical courts will say that what you have to do is, we're not going to really take you that seriously unless you move. And, the whole point is to be part of a Jewish community. Now, I had somebody, as I mentioned before, they were jumping up and down, yelling and screaming and saying look at how many gays there are in Israel, when saying that they couldn't move, right? A husband had a certain job, he couldn't move. So I understand, I do have sympathy, certainly for that. And a person's not expected, to lose everything, in order to convert. But at the same time, there has to be some level of criteria. And that criteria is going to have to be that you're going to have to be part of the Jews. Now, when someone comes out of Christianity, this is a major thing. This is a major thing. This is a major thing that someone's going to have to realize, and that is that that moving is crucial. It's absolutely 100% right. Crucial. So the rabbinical courts, may make some leeway for somebody that's within striking distance if they go away every Shabbos and for all the holidays or whatever. It's really not that conducive. You're talking about going somewhere, every Shabbos doesn't mean someone's going to host you. You might have to stay in a hotel. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, to do that. And, I'm pretty well aware that most rabbinical courts they're not even going to entertain, the idea unless they say, okay, we'll let you convert here, even though the community's not, let's say the community's not as strong, right, which is very small, even if you go away for Shabbos and, in all the holidays, but they may put it on condition, even though, making a conversion on condition is almost non-existent. But they may say within 6 months to a year or whatever, you're gonna have to move to a community. If a person is well outside the community, there's nothing around, a rabbinical court's not really gonna, they're not really going to, touch them. What they'll say is, you can learn, you can study, whatever, but the rabbinical court will not, most likely will not deal with them in any way, shape, or form because of that. Now, there is a lot of frustration and say, I finally come to the truth. I finally realize what's going on in the world, and yet all of a sudden now I have to move with the Jews. Like I'm a farmer, 300 miles away from the nearest Jewish community,
right?
Or whatever the case is, and it's impossible for me to move. So again, maybe I'm not showing enough, empathy, which I should show, but there is a reality, and the reality is like doing things online is not enough. Jumping into your virtual mikvah is, doesn't mean anything. You have to be part of the community, and it makes a lot of sense because in essence, what a person needs to be surrounded by people. First of all, they think the same way. They're doing the same thing, but also when there are good events, marriage of a kid or whatever, birth of a child, you're going to have people sharing that, right? There are things that, there are customs and things that are done. Somebody that, God forbid somebody dies. There's people to help out or whatever. If you live in the middle of nowhere, you have none of that. Not only that, but you're not really part of the synagogue, and you're not in the flow of prayer either, right? So that's a major, that's a major thing for some people. That is something that's unconquerable. That's something that's just, it's an impossibility. Either because, they live in a farm, or either because, let's say, they can't afford to move. Let's say, because of the housing crisis or whatever, houses aren't worth as much and all that. So at the end of the day, they can't move, right? They can't sell and move to a Jewish community, because you move to a Jewish community, prices are through the roof, when it comes to, housing and all that. So, there's an unfortunate reality. I think one of the benefits, of what I do is that, I deal with people in these situations, but I tell people straight away that at some point in the future, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or whatever, at some point in the future, this is what you're going to have to do. If it's an impossibility, okay, then it's an impossibility. What if a person, has a spouse doesn't want to convert and they're married, and they really believe that this is the right thing and this is what they want to do? Well, you have one of two choices. Either you stay in Noahide or you get divorced. Now, I never tell anyone who's in a happy marriage or whatever, to get divorced unless there are other issues going on. But that's also a sad reality. I had somebody for many years that, explaining this finally hit home. And they said, rabbis, I've been married 25 years. Says, I can't afford to get divorced. Right? So he said, this is what I want to do, but, my wife wants to go in a different direction. So I said, you have one or two choices. It took him about 1.5 years to finally for that to hit home. And, that is that's an unfortunate reality. But, keep in mind, if certain criteria is not met, then a person's not going to convert. So a person says, but this is what my desire is, and, and all this and all that, that could be. But maybe God just wants you to be a non-Jew also. I mean, being a non-Jew is not a bad thing. I have no offense, to any non-Jews out there, except ones that have married my own family, right? That I take offense to. But, otherwise somebody wants to, someone who can't convert or doesn't want to convert, there's a tremendous amount that they can do. Now, again, they might be limited by, they might be geographically limited by what's around them. But, there is what to be said for, keeping within certain guidelines. And once you go outside those guidelines, as we mentioned before, that's not Torah anymore. And that's Torah made up in your own mind. And the more you change it, the more it doesn't stick. And that statistically, shows that. But what is, going to start to happen, soon enough is that Noahides are going to be taught what they need to do and how they need to do it, and set up their own communities, right? That is in the process. That's, I'm in the middle of something right now that, getting that off the ground. Hopefully after, after the holidays are over. Right. But that's going to be a major thing, because they're not going to have to live amongst Jews. They're going to, they can have, classes online and other things or whatever, but they're going to be taught what they need to do and have people within their own community and build their own communities. Not necessarily, so they don't have to move, right? They're not going to have to go anywhere, but they can start these things and sprout out from their own community. That is first of all, there's a tremendous need for that. And second of all, that fills a void that most people have. And that is they don't live, amongst, they don't live in a Jewish community, because that's really where their nourishment should be. Their spiritual nourishment should come from them. Right, but if they don't live, amongst the community, most Noahides that I speak to, this is the problem. I've no one to talk to. I have nowhere to go. My family doesn't want me. The Jews don't want me. So just come to TORAH Talk. We love you. It's not a problem. We're one big,
right.
happy virtual, sometimes even in person, family.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
that being the case, I think this is, this is probably the single biggest problem, besides the fact of what a Noahide can do. Right, that's the other. Those are the two big issues. Right. By Noahides is no sense of community and the wide variety of what they're allowed to do, because there's some people that hold a lot by the laws of Shabbos, which we mentioned a few weeks ago, and they won't drive or whatever, so someone has to come to them. So there are many different levels. One of the things that trying to work on with this project is to make it streamlined. In other words, that people are going to do more or less the same thing. There will be gradations here and there, but if they're not doing the same thing, it's all haphazard. Some do more, some do less, some do this. Some sit in the sukkah, some sit in a tent in their backyard. Some do all kinds of do you get that? Anyway, all kinds of different things that there's no consistency. And one of the things by us, by the Jews, is it's uniform. It's standard. There's, you go to a synagogue, this is what you pray. This is what you say. This is, there are different customs between Ashkenazic and Sephardic, but it's all uniformed. There's a law book, right? There's a Shulchan Aruch. There's a code of Jewish law. Noahides don't have that. Right. Even though it's being worked on, they don't have. There's so many things that they don't have, that they need. So. So I guess a little prelude, we'll say we're going to, open the box a little bit. This is something that is being worked on and, is hopefully going to come out in a very strong way. So that should mitigate, a lot of these problems. I mean, there'll be growing pains along the way, but this is the way to set them up to have their own places. They can run it under the guidance of, proper rabbinic authority, and that's going to be a major game changer, right? Because then anyone who wants to tap in, they don't have to leave their community. Right. They can stay exactly where they are. They want to be, a farmer. They want to, do other things, or whatever the case is. Even if they can't move, doesn't mean they're stuck, right? But again, it has to be done within a certain way, and knowledge has to be given over in a certain way. But if people are going to be trained, if they're going to be trained for their own communities, that's a huge thing. What's going on in Humboldt, Texas, is an unbelievable thing. Right. They have a community run by themselves. Pretty much. They have rabbis that come and speak, and they do plenty of things online. That's a tremendous thing. At least people have where to go. Right. Even if they don't live within walking distance, doesn't matter. They can live half an hour away, 40 minutes away, an hour away, whatever it is, and tap in as much or as little as they want. But most people don't. See, the problem is most people don't have that. Right. So even if a person lives in Idaho, is there a Noahide community in Idaho? I don't think so. Right. But someone who comes from there wants to build something, wants to put out the word. That is something that is, that hopefully is going to be much more of a viable option, in the future once this whole thing, really gets off the ground, which is an unbelievable idea. Is why, one of the main reasons I'm getting involved, because A, I think it's a great idea, and B, I think it would really change what's going on in the Noahide movement and make it so real that, people will feel comfortable. They will be able to come. They will be able to do things at their own speed without leaving, their own community. I think that's a huge, huge thing. I mean, trust me, there's a lot of work, involved on a lot of different levels for that. But that'll solve that problem. Now, someone's going to say, okay, that was my my stepping around the question, so to speak. But someone who wants to convert, you're living on a farm, no one's going to convert you that way.
Right.
It doesn't mean that every community is in a city. That's not what it means.
Right.
There are communities, in further out places. I think, I have to see where this other community outside of Denver was holding, because they wanted people to move there, whatever, because they do have a much bigger community where people can, send their kids to school and, et cetera. But, they want to be on a farm. They want to be more agricultural. So that's about probably the only place I know of that actually, that actually is doing something like that. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure where it's holding. This is a few years ago already that, people were already starting to plan it. But, most places certainly not going to have that. And, again, there's only two options. One option is you go full throttle, you have to move. Just go into something else, or the other option is you don't convert. There's not, like I said, if you call up a rabbinical court and you actually get someone to speak to, they'll probably give you about 5 minutes, if that, and they'll say, okay, if you really want to convert, then you have to move. That's pretty much what they're going to, that's pretty much what they're going to tell you. Again, if they even give you the time of day, but that's what, that's what's going to be. With that. And, and again, I think that, I think it's frustrating. A lot of people go through this tremendous frustration, finally after years and years of being duped, they say, I finally seen the reality. This is the truth.
And you can't get in, right.
And then they're stuck.
Right.
I don't have any solution for that, except for the fact that I can certainly, empathize. There are ways to learn, whatever, and, get something out of what you're doing,
right.
And have meaning in life, that's for sure. It's probably, not exactly what you want or what you're necessarily striving for, but, at the end of the day, you got to take what God gives you. You got to take what's on your plate and then work with it in the best way possible, where you can maximize your spiritual development, getting what you need. Okay, you might not get everything, but if a person moves in the Jewish community, they might say, wow, this is what Jews do. This is really what I want to be a part of. They may get dissuaded by that also. They're like, I don't want any part of this. It's not what I expected. Right. That's why, I always tell people that, don't expect anything. Expect absolutely zero. Expect to be spit on and everything else. Not that I'm saying that's permissible, but, expect that you're not going to get any help, and people probably leave you in the lurch, right. As well, because, we're not interested in all this, but if someone perseveres, then they'll get to the other side. And even if they don't want to get to the other side, they'll get what they need if they get in contact with the right people. And the problem is there are a lot of pretenders. There are a lot of pretenders out there claim they can do this, do that, and do the other thing, and claim to be the real deal, and they're a fraud.
Right.
There's a lot of, what we call rabbinical fraud. There's, that unfortunately, that's what's out there. So, a person has to be hooked up with the right people, get the right advice, and do what they need to do based on their own, situation. I'm just talking about, things in, things in general, but it's going to be very hard for a person to, if they're going to live in the middle of nowhere, and have their horse farm or, any type of farm, in order to be a Jew, unless you're living, amongst other Jews or have a bigger community around you, almost an impossibility. That is, unfortunately, that is, the reality. But, if a person really desires this is what they want to do, they're going to have to make life-changing decisions. Anyone who wants to convert, these are life-changing decisions. You got to send your kids to Jewish schools. You want to be, amongst Jews. You're going to have to move. These are definite life-changing decisions. And for some people, it's too much to overcome. Either they can't afford to move, or they can't move, or for any number of reasons. That's an unfortunate reality. And being that that's the case, there's really not much to be done, because you want to be a Jew, you got to live amongst, you have to live amongst Jews. So being a Noahide is definitely a viable option. It has its issues. It definitely has its issues as well. But we're not living in a perfect world, because we messed it up.
Right.
So since we messed it up, this is the reality that we have. If this is the reality, you got to work with the reality. You cannot, person says, so fine, I'll be a Reformed Jew, right? I'm not advocating that, right? They're much more reasonable. Okay, they're disappearing also. There's not going to be anything left of them. There's, 70% into marriage, they're finished. So you want to be part of something that's going to disappear. Okay, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not advocating it, right? By any stretch. It's like, well, I have no other choice. I mean, yeah, you do have other choices,
right?
But you just want to do what's convenient. You want to have the name as being a Jew and all that, but you're not willing to do it in the way that it needs to be done. So if you're not willing to do it the way it needs to be done, you're also going to disappear.
You won't be.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say earlier, I would encourage all of the people out there who classify themselves as Noahides and or future converts. The phrase "lower your expectations" never comes across warm and fuzzy, but
right.
I would say that your expectations are too high whenever you go, if you've been heartbroken in this. Because think about this. If, like me, I've got a teenage daughter, right? So if we have an empty house next door and a house full of teenage boys moves in, what's the very first thing I'm going to be doing? Think about that for a minute. You as a parent who has teenage daughters, what's the very first thing Daddy's going to do knowing teenage boys just moved in next door? You can bet your sweet butt they are not coming anywhere near my property, right? So you have to be realistic about your expectations in this situation. The Jewish people have protected Judaism, at least Orthodox Judaism, for well over 3,000 years, right? They're good at it. They know how to protect Judaism, right? It's the second and the thirds down, or fourth, however you want to call it, conservative, not necessarily conservative, but reforms that's allowing all these conversions to come in to infiltrate. But Orthodox Judaism keeps things as pure as possible, right? So don't be too hard on the Orthodox synagogue when you go there, and if they are standoffish to you. Think about your kids. Think about, if you, like I said, let's say you get a house full of boys and some drug dealers moved in next door, or maybe ex-drug dealers. Even if they said, well, we don't do drugs anymore, you're still going to be watching out for them, like every step they make, every move they make, every phone call. You're going to be like, what are you talking about? What happened? What? It's the protective thing to do. So just be realistic and be more understanding, because if you can take yourself there, you will not get offended as often and be hurt as much, and you don't need to be hurt. We all agree with that.
I mean, listen, even within the conservative movement, what they've come out with, recently is that they're not even doing conversions. They'll say they have so many non-Jews, so we'll just let the non-Jews come in.
Oh, right, right.
So by addition, what you have is subtraction. In other words, yeah. You have 65-70% into marriage there, and you have your brain open, till your mind's open till your brains fall on the floor. So that's great. There's only one problem: it doesn't work.
Right.
It just totally doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, I don't care what your philosophy is, but I really want this. But again, you can want whatever you want. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, right. And that's not what Torah is.
Right.
Torah is all about, understanding what it is, and, it's God's law. If it's
right.
God, do you believe God gave the Torah or not? Either you believe God gave the Torah or you're in idolatry. There's
right.
nothing in between. So therefore, if I believe the Torah is true, I have to understand what it is, and I have to see how it's passed down and what I have to do. I give up my own ideas. Like someone told me, recently a guy comes to synagogue, in a certain place, and he's like, yeah, I'm a Christian. And I have my Christian ideas, but I like to come to synagogue. All right, that sounds a little bit strange.
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit strange. So this person asks, is like, I was arguing with this person, whatever. I said, yeah, you should. The person doesn't belong in synagogue. He's a Christian, not a Noahide. He's a Christian. So let him go to his own church. Let him go, he's got his own, wacky ideas of different things. So, that's not a place where you want to be. So, I want to do what I want to do. If God allowed that, so fine. But obviously, right. There's legislation. There's a whole book, the whole book behind it. And he's saying this is what is best, and this is what has worked. In Judaism without a Torah, is is disappearing. That's the only reason the Jews have survived is because of Torah, nothing else.
Right.
So, I would agree if all these innovations in theory would bring so many more people back to synagogue and would do all these great things. So yeah, then I would be a firm believer. Not that I would, just kidding. But I'd be a firm believer. Let's see it bring people back. It's not about that. It's about feminism. It's about doing what I want to do. And a person coming from the outside in, regardless of what happens, you're coming from the outside in. You cannot have a chip on your shoulder that we should be rolling out the red carpet. It's totally it's totally unreal. I don't expect people to be thrown in the ground and buried and all that. I'm not advocating up to a point. I'm not advocating, certainly not advocating that. At the same time, person has to have their have the eyes in front of their head. This would not be acceptable in any other religion. Forget religion. Imagine walking to a Japanese restaurant and they say, "Sir, you have to take off your shoes." They're like, "I'm not taking off my shoes. What do you think I'm gonna take? What do you think this is an airport? What do you think I'm gonna blow up the place? You have to serve me." What are they gonna do? They're gonna show you the door.
Right.
No one's even gonna argue about that. You want to come into a synagogue, you want to do what you want, and all this. All of a sudden, all the arguments are gonna come up. I have the right to do this, and I have the right to do that, and I have all these things that whatever. Forget it. Go to a Japanese restaurant and say you're not taking off your shoes. No sushi. That's it.
Right.
No sushi. It's over. But that's nobody in their right mind would ever ask that question. Nobody. When it comes to Judaism, everything's open, everything's on the table. I can do what I want. You can't tell me. You're a bigot. You're the and that's just outrageous. That's just totally totally outrageous. Like someone would ask me, is a redneck allowed to convert? I said, sure. I said, we take anybody as long as you do what you need to do. It doesn't matter you're white, you're black, Chinese. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But there has to be a standard. And if there's no standard, then you do whatever you want. If you do whatever you want, that's not Torah, and it doesn't work. So I don't really care about anything else. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
That's funny. Well, Rabbi, you thought you were going to get out of here in 15 to 30 minutes. I knew you couldn't pull it off.
Right.
I knew it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Right. Read my lips.
Hey, it was 5 minutes in dog years, okay? That was
that's right.
35 minutes. Whatever, tomato. Hey, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Rabbi, thank you for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom. And, you guys, be sure to subscribe to the website. Also, all of you viewers out there, don't forget, April coming up in 2018, Rabbi Singer and I are going on a tour to Israel. If you want to find out more about it, go to the TORAH Talk Facebook page. Check out the link there. And if you want to get on board, you better move quick. So we only have limited seating. And so,
anyone who wants to come visit me, I'll be
we're gonna have to come and visit. Do a quick stop lunch by Rabbi Coffman while we're in Israel. So it'll be fun. So it's been fun. So look forward to seeing everybody later on at a different time. So thank you all for tuning in. We will see you later. Shalom, shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Shalom.
She